on heart, on destiny. It really is a great pleasure and privilege to be here in Aruba to be delivering this lecture to the CARPHA organization and to colleagues and peers from all over the Caribbean. And I give thanks to the God of all technologies in terms of my presentations. And my mantra is emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. And I place myself in the context of this narrative ethnography. And I grew in colonial Jamaica, 5 minutes away from a park camp, where the soldiers of the Duke Cornwall Light Infantry were part of the 300-year history of slavery. And I went to a boys' school in which my headmaster was also a colonel in the British Army. The struggle of political freedom across the Caribbean. I was the stage manager to this fantastic man, Rex Nettleford, for 15 years. In my early years, I was a political activist, I guess in my later years too. I was also anatomist, went to St. Thomas's Hospital, where I also studied anatomy, and I graduated from UWI in 1969. And my psychiatric mentor was Michael Bobron from 1970. Contemporary encapsulation of the delusion in the independent movement and the empire fighting back and the present intifadas from all over the world. This is what I call a psychohistoriogram and was the basis of the cultural therapy programs. We built this garden theater in Bellevue Hospital in 1978, the patients and the staff. And we produced magnificent narrations and a number of other fantastic dramas. And we started writing it up because my mantra is that if it's not written, it's not done. And so here we started to increase the concentration of the community program. And here was the integration into primary care, where we integrated psychiatry with the matron, with the surgeons, with the nurses, and the integration with the general practitioners across the country. And by now, over 80% of psychiatry is in fact treated by non-psychiatric personnel across the country. We introduced radius psychotherapy, and a number of us are now involved in that. And we started writing about the program. If it's not written, it's not done. Ganja is here to stay. I started talking about that from the 1970s, defending Rastafari at an international conference, where I used cannabis in the treatment of a particular patient, and I was roundly chastised by the Ministry of Health, and I was told not to use any Bellevue patients for that. The Star said, listen, because I was wearing dreadlocks, maybe I was the chief madman in the place. But look what Sanjay Gupta is now saying, pot is okay. So we were writing about the clinical perspectives of the Rastafari movement. But I became a pariah in the public sector at that time, and therefore set up my own business. Converted my family home at Connolly House into Psychotherapy Associates. It was not only a clinic, but it was a community cultural catalyst center where we had all kinds of activities. And we were publishing about sociodrama and psychohistoriography. And in the meantime now, the people in Britain were reporting 6 to 18 times higher rates for African Caribbean schizophrenia in the United Kingdom. And so I started doing the research and showed much lower rates for schizophrenia in Jamaica, and that the increased rate for schizophrenia I was suggesting was due to racism in that particular country. Robin Murray and his colleagues strongly countered by positing biological causes for the high rates of mental illness. While I was working with Robin, I was almost arrested by the police for driving while black in this fantastic new car. I started working with Pam Rogers Johnson, who is this wonderful mentor of mine, and we showed this fantastic study that the age incidence in Jamaica of schizophrenia was less than that of the whites. I started doing this diagnostic study with Robin Murray, showing that there was a low level of agreement between the Jamaican and British psychiatrists, but there was a good level of agreement when it came to the white patients. So it's a very serious issue. So I was started lecturing all around Europe about the misdiagnosis in the UK. White mentally ill immigrants to Jamaica have a much lower rate of schizophrenia when compared to controls. I then did a 6-month consultancy in Manawaroa, Palmerston North in New Zealand, and ran a community health service there. So I became a community health expert in all over the world, including Britain, which is the second largest Caribbean island with 1.5 million Caribbeans in it. And I collaborated with Sashi Duran and Ray Cochran in doing work, and my wife and I teamed up to demonstrate racism in the mental health services. And we replicated the Connolly House model in Jamaica, in inner city Birmingham, and my wife and I taught cultural therapy at community organizations. We were working with 27 consultants at the North Birmingham Mental Health Trust and Aston and Small Heath until 2000. And in fact, we won the 1999 Nye Bevan Award to the National Health Service Trailblazers because we had successfully reduced the admission rate from 6 weeks to less than 3 weeks in that particular institution. This was a fantastic thing in Britain at that particular time. And Gerard Hutchinson and I wrote up this fantastic paper called Roast Breadfruit Psychosis, Disturbed Racial Identification. And then I was invited back to the Caribbean, where Rex Nettleford said, Prof. Fredrick Hickling was indeed a shock to many of his peers. He was certainly causing waves amongst those peers, and later at his Creative Arts Center, where his mother taught music. I was systematically attacking poor research and publication at UWI, Faculty of Medical Sciences. And I then went about trying to change the mental health culture, research culture in psychiatry, and to change how psychiatrists were taught, and instituted the OSCE across the University of the West Indies, and started modernizing the training for future psychiatric residents in the Caribbean. We then changed the mental hospital law, and Janet Lagranard and Earl Wright were the main architects of this. It's important to recognize that our Mental Hospital Health Act is quite different from anywhere in the rest of the Caribbean, but that's another discussion which we'll have to have. And we were showing that treating patients on open general medical wards compared to any other stuff was the best thing for them. We had a Cochrane Library publication on this, and then we started to broaden out the community mental health service all over the country, and we started training clinical psychologists in 2001. Personality disorder, I started working on that. And we had to base the diagnosis of personality disorder on phenomenological grounds, not cultural grounds. We found a clinical trial of authority conflicts and power struggles, unresolved psychosexual anxiety, and the dependency issues of both pathological, physiological, and psychological variety. Those were the clinical trial of the personality disorder. I did a study of 36 condemned men at the St. Catherine District Prison in 1974 and showed that 15% of them had very high IQs, much higher than the rest of the population, and 66% of them had diagnoses of antisocial personality disorders. We also did a population study to show that 41% of the Jamaican population were eligible for a diagnosis of personality disorder. And of course, the country was very alarmed at this particular finding. If we don't own our madness, we'll be facilitating virulent pathogens to destroy our society. And Jamaica's first politically constructed inner city garrison community, Christopher Dudoscope, the latest Don, has recently got 22 years in prison. And there was this massacre in Tivoli Gardens in 2010, Eddie Siaba. Oh, Tivoli, you are so innocent and adorable. He is the architect of the electoral garrison in Jamaica. Then we started to engage with world psychiatry. Vikram Patel from India was suggesting that the cultural context in the developing world is profoundly different from the developed world. And Nature came out with this article in which Patel said that we had to scale up coverages for mental disorders all over the world. But Suman Fernando was saying, listen, these priorities are framed by the wealthy countries. They are focusing on a biological model. One size does not fit all. And Derek Summerfield was saying the mental health industry is out of control. It is the white Western world that's imposing this. And are we now entering a new phase of world colonization in psychiatry? But in the meantime, in Jamaica, we were just expanding what we had been doing for 40 years. And for the first time, we employed a community psychiatrist. And Bellevue Hospital was gradually going to nothing. It was deteriorating by this natural process. And we were engaging in the community with a mental health revolution, the great push forward. And we were treating patients more and more in the community, not in hospitals, not in mental hospitals. Jamaica's mental health system may not be a Cadillac, but it's a great Volkswagen. It has a 24-hour response time to acute mental illness. It treats 2,500 schizophrenic patients across the island hospitals. 3 out of every 4 psychiatric admissions in general hospitals. 55,000 severely mentally ill patients. And the problem statement are the youth between 15 and 25. And this is what we have to focus on. And of course, these are the pioneers in the epidemiology and treatment of childhood and adolescent mental health. Our Jamaican children are suffering from 5 physical abuse and neglect, high rates of sexual abuse, 40% pregnancies under the age of 16, 50% school dropout rates and illiteracy, high rates of youth aggression and criminality. And this is what we have to focus on. The mental health challenges for this millennium are a shift from curative to preventative mental health care. Since 1972, the creation of antidotes for conduct and impulsivity disorders and antisocial behavior, and thus we established the Caribbean Institute of Mental Health and Substance Abuse about primary mental health prevention rather than cure. And we set this up in the community, in my own private practice. Recent studies have shown that if children are not reading by age 8, they are most likely to become involved in difficult behavior. So we put out this proof of concept in 2006 with the Allentown Primary School. And I'll show you this film clip which we made about the Dreamer World project. Volume, please.
The Dream a World Cultural Therapy Program was designed for 9-year-old primary school children in inner city Kingston by the Caribbean Institute of Substance Abuse and Mental Health, CARIMENSA, of the University of the West Indies, Mona. The program started with the deputy headmistress of the Allentown Primary School selecting 25 students who had failed the Ministry of Education Grade 3 examination in 2006. The children were also having behavioral problems and being disruptive in school. Based Based on their previous experiences at the school, the teachers expected that the children would fail the National High School Entrance Examination, or GSAT, that they would sit in 3 years' time. Our aim was to change this expected outcome. The workshop was in the first 3 weeks of the summer holidays in July 2006, on Mondays to Thursdays. Fridays were used for weekly reviews by the staff and teachers. At the start of the program, the students were observed to be hyperactive and significantly conduct disordered.
I certainly know that the first day that I saw them, I was really startled by the level of hyperactivity that I saw in the group. And from a clinical point of view, I would say that maybe a number of them were suffering from what is called attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Characteristic of most inner city communities, the children lived in conditions of poverty. They lived with single parents or grandparents, and many reported significant physical and emotional abuse, as well as other horrendous life experiences.
There's one little girl who is one of 13 siblings. There's a little boy who was abandoned by his mother when he was 1 month old. And he's now 9, he hasn't seen her since.
Many of the children were also undernourished with dietary deprivation, so the program first focused on their nutrition. The children were provided with breakfast and lunch on a daily basis. The first 2 hours of each day were devoted to computer-based remedial mathematics and reading, tutored by teachers from the school. For this, the children were divided into small groups of 6 to 8. The workshop following these classes allowed them to participate in psychological work, also done in small groups. In the initial sessions, they were asked to identify themselves. We took photographs and made laminated identity cards for each child. These identity cards seemed to be a source of self-esteem as the children wore them proudly, and at times conflict arose when they were expected to relinquish the cards at the end of the day. As a main focus of the workshop, the children created a play. They were asked to identify the things that they liked and did not like on their planet Earth. They were asked to create and name fantasy planets with animals and plants that inhabited them, and to imagine was a new experience for them. It was remarkable to see their excitement at visiting places they had only heard of, as this opened a whole new world of possibility of moving outside the confines of their community. At the end of the workshop, the Dream a World drama was presented as a show and tell at the community's Anglican Church Hall. The audience consisted of the children's guardians, community members, and the local media. All were excited by the performance. The local newspaper made a full-page report on their performance with photographs of their drama and some of the children. During the school term following the workshop, 2-hour top-up cultural therapy sessions were held every other week. Another 40-hour workshop was held the following summer in the first month of their summer holidays. The second show and tell performance indicated how the children had grown and had moved from the bottom of their class to now being the leaders and cultural activists in the school. The top-up sessions were discontinued at the end of 2008 as the children prepared for their upcoming GSAT examinations in March 2009. In December 2007, the children gave a special performance and interaction with 60 psychiatrists from around the world who were attending an international psychiatric conference at the Pegasus Hotel in Kingston, Jamaica. The psychiatrists were amazed at the children's ability to perform cohesively. The parents and teachers have reported the incredible improvement of these children in math, reading, and social skills following the cultural therapy process.
Since the past 3 weeks, she's coming to me from difference. Can we know?
There is powerful qualitative evidence that the cultural therapy workshop has had a significant transformatory effect on the behavior of these inner city children.
And I'd like to say that all 30 of these children immediately passed the GSAT and went into technical high schools all over the country. And in fact, the controls didn't. And that indicated, therefore, that really that this was an evidence-based process that we could replicate. We then did some studies on it using the ACEBA, published the studies in Canada. They showed significant social and behavioral adjustment compared to the controls. And they in fact showed boys more improved than the girls. And this is something we're not understanding quite clearly at the moment, but we're working on this. We've recently got a very large grant from Canada to scale this project up and to study it now in 100 children in a city, Kingston, in Seaview Gardens since July 2013. The scale-up task sharing project is in 4 primary schools, and we have had the first show and tell in 2013, July. And as a result of that now, we have to move from 4 scale-up to 400, the transition to scale. And we were invited to London to participate in this competition by the London School of Hygiene. And volume, please. Volume.
Low and middle income countries in the world. We all have something to learn. I know this from my own experience. My name is Nigel Crisp, and for some years I ran the NHS in England. But more recently I've been working in low and middle income countries around the world, particularly in Africa and Asia, and I've discovered how much we have to learn. And what's more, it is really important we do so now. Health and healthcare has never been under greater pressure, and people in the world have never wanted more health and more healthcare from their governments and from the organisations that look after them. We need to source innovation wherever it is in the world, and that's the purpose of this site. So what I'd like you to do is to register, to contribute your ideas and what you've seen of innovations happening in other countries which we could learn from throughout the world. I'd then like you to comment on the ones that other people have posted, to commentate on what's been happening, and to pass this on through Twitter or Facebook or whatever other media you want to use. In addition, I'm going to have some guest commentators, people from around the world, people like Francis Amazwa from the African Centre for Health and Social Transformation, or Srinith Reddy from the Public Health Foundation of India, or Paul Farmer from Partners in Health in Harvard, or indeed Dame Sally Davis from my own country of England, or Enrique Wallace from Mexico. They're all going to comment on what they've seen, so that together we can build awareness for what is happening. So do please join us, do please share, do please teach us what you know and learn from other people on the site. And do please together, let's turn the world upside down. Thank you.
And so this turning the world upside down competition, there had 34 entries from 28 countries and 6 geographic regions. We had 6 entries from Jamaica. And you have seen all of these already. The admission to general awards, the integration, the deinstitutionalization gradually of the mental hospital, the community engagement program, and the Dreamer World. Those were our 6 entries from the Jamaican, and we were chosen, the Dreamer World, to be one of 4 at this panel in London. The first one was a case study from India, and using mobile telepsychiatry. The second was another case study from India called Sundar by Vikram Patel. The third was from Chris Underhill in the United Kingdom, an economic and social approach. And the fourth was our Dreamer World Cultural Therapy intervention for promoting resilience. And they had quite a big audience at the London School of Hygiene. And these were the judges. First of all, Baroness Sheila Hollins, Professor of Psychiatry, Claudia Hammond, the BBC, Jane McGrath, a service user, Paul Farmer, Chief Executive of Mind, and of course the editor of Nature. And the questions they asked me were very significant. How many children do you need to change the shocking statistics? What are the outcomes going to be? Was there a control group? These are the questions coming from the judges. How to identify the right people to invest in a scalability on a mass level. How to provide the support as adolescents when they reach to high school. Can you address the overrepresentation of black people in mental health services in the UK? What Dreamer World components?
Please.
And
okay.
I respond.
The first thing is that we are sure that we're going to scale this thing up. Everybody in Jamaica wants the scale up to happen. And so that's number one. Number two, we have learned in this first scale up issue that we have done that the key is the task sharing with the teachers, because the teachers have been so overwhelmed by the process of combining psychological processes with teaching processes. It has taught them a whole new arena as to how they're going to deal with it. So they are going to introduce it in the school so that it's not going to be a specific process where you take an injection needle and you give it to the worst people. So it's going to scale up itself in a sense. And that's what we have to be able to follow, to be able to know that this thing is going to happen. The next thing is that the questions that you asked about the 13-year-olds and 14-year-olds.
And of course, the person who puts his hand up is furthest away. Is there a microphone there as well? There is a microphone.
The first comment is, listen, I worked for 4 years in this country. I worked as a consultant psychiatrist in Aston and Small Heath. And in the 4 years that we were there, we were able to turn that world upside down. We in fact won the Nye Bevan Award in 1999 because we had reduced the inpatient stay in the Small Heath inpatients from 6 weeks to 3 weeks. We had turned that world upside down, so it can be done. All I was doing was bringing
third world methods into a first world country. So it can be done cost effectively, very cheaply. If we in other words, I had to leave England because I was going to die. It was the racism was going to kill me. As far as your question is concerned, we are really trying to unpack that answer right now. With my colleagues in McGill, we are trying to find out what it is that really works. I keep telling Jaswal Guzda, who is the child psychiatrist we work with there, I believe it is a concept, it is something which I'm calling cultural DNA. And I believe that there is a cultural DNA that is embedded in the limbic system, that it actually has a root in the brain, and it has a root in every culture, and that if you put the correct components in that limbic response, you will get. And if you now look at childhood trauma, 8-year-old child with problems, dream a world, and get them to talk about the things they love, about their memories, about their experiences, about the things they hate, then they will have an insight and a reasoning, and they will set goals and tasks, and they will engage their creative imagination. And this is what I'm calling the cultural DNA flip, which flips resiliency production, which increases academia. But it has to be reinforced by translating those psychological concepts into lyrics, music, plays, poems, moves, forms, costumes, drawings, masks, songs, drama, dance, and art. And you reinforce this over a couple of years, and you will have transformed these kids. And then the team investment now with the teachers and all of these issues will scale it up to the rest of the schools. I believe that this is something that we have developed. We won the exercise in London, and in fact, this is really something that is our own. Carrie Mensa has established its own press, a means for disseminating the work that we are doing in mental health and the books that we have published. We have to really recognize that we have to get back to this business of owning our own madness as a narrative for our own survival, turning European psychiatry upside down, and emancipating ourselves from mental slavery by re-engineering post-colonial Jamaica, by catalyzing insight revolution, by healing the trauma of slavery and genocide, by re-engineering the family, by assimilating psychiatry in general medicine. Then we can emancipate ourselves, and we can teach the emergent generations self-control and self-discipline. We can go from the corner league to the World Cup by standing up for your rights. Stand up, stand up. One love, brothers and sisters. One heart, one destiny.
Let me thank Professor Hickling for such a stimulating, challenging, and encouraging presentation. I think that all of us would have been moved, would have been inspired, and believe that we can make a difference within our own countries and really transform our world, turn our world upside down. I'm sure well, we are out of time, let me say that first, but I'm sure that you would want to have the opportunity for a few comments before we close the session and ask Dr. Simeon to come for the closing activities. So any comments to this very, very inspiring presentation?
Thank you, Professor Hickling, for an absolutely, I don't know what the phrase is, tour de force. Writing an invited piece on how the Caribbean has punched above its weight in global public health. And I must say, I did not have this on my radar screen as clearly. You really have to look at how that could fit into a chapter in the book entitled How the Caribbean Has Punched Above Its Weight in Global Public Health. Two clear examples are we eliminated measles and we were the first in the world to do so. The Americans and the British came to find out how we did it. And the second is taking the problem of NCD to the UN and the global level. It's the first time such small countries had gotten the whole world to sit down and pay attention to something. My question for you, I thought you might have touched on it, in all this move to community-based approaches, which I agree with, but sometimes people ideologically go in that direction. You didn't make a single comment about whether the street population had increased or whether the prison population had increased. So how do you know that all these people you put out of the mental hospital didn't end up in prison or on the street?
We're absolutely sure, because we have the numbers. There are only 400 people in the 5,000 prisoners in the island who have mental illness, and two-thirds of those have developed mental illness while they have been in the prison. So we know that we have not moved them from the mental hospital into the prison. Number one. Number two, we have studied the homeless population in Jamaica. And the reality is that none of the homeless population in Jamaica have come out of the mental hospital. What has happened is that we have had a gradual rehabilitation program of people going back home and being assimilated into their families at home. We know this. We have the proof. We have the evidence on this. Everybody asks the same question all over the world. And because they ask, we have the evidence.
Okay, I must commend you on the inspiration that you have given me today. I have never met you personally. I've heard about you. You know, I'm a sojourner in a small island in the Caribbean. But we today presented a paper called Community-Based Rehabilitation during the need assessment of disabled persons in need. And what you have presented is along the same theme of what we were trying to do in our little corner of the world. So it seems as if the whole world is coming together on this community-based approach providing it here. I mean, my training is in anesthesia, but I do some practice on my small community. So I think both ends of the spectrum of medical problems. And like yourself, without doing any formal research, I have come to the conclusion that a lot of problems that people face without label psychiatry are due to poor communication. Somebody didn't understand someone crying for help and they were labeled wrongly, and then that label got stuck, and then they become ostracized for the rest of their lives. So thank you very much for the inspiration that you have given me today.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Okay, thanks. So let me thank Professor Hickling again for the very wonderful presentation. Let me also thank all the participants in this session. We had a very interesting session and very great audience interaction. And I think this is a fitting way for us to bring the presentations to a close on a Saturday afternoon here in Aruba. Any comments, Dan?
No, I just want to echo what you said and invite Dr. Simeon to take over.
Okay, thank you.